Welcome again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our first general info session for financial aid for students that are hoping to join our little community here in the fall of 2024. My name is Brian Boman. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment, Admissions, and Financial Aid here at BU Wheelock. I myself have only been at BU Wheelock for about a year and a half. I started in the summer of 2022. That said, I have been in financial aid for 8 years now. Prior to being at BU Wheelock, I was an assistant director over at Berklee College of Music. And prior to that, I was actually a financial aid counselor here at the Boston University Undergraduate School. I am a Boston University alum. I graduated in 2015. So I have been around. So even if you have questions at the end of the session about just the greater Boston area in general, I'd be happy to help you with those as well. But like I said, there will be a question session at the end. So if you do have questions, please hold them till the end. Or if you're not comfortable speaking out loud, you can also type them in the chat. I do have a colleague who is secretly going to be helping me in the chat. If you have some general questions, he can help you answer. Okay. Let's get going. There we go. So quick little agenda for tonight. We're going to go over a cost of attendance overview. We're going to look at scholarships and eligibility. We're going to go over available resources to you. So that's all the other types of aid. Federal aid requirements, how to apply for federal aid, private lending options, which is going to be important for a lot of you, payment plans, and then, like I said, time for questions at the end. So the first thing to understand when you're talking about financial aid, and maybe one of the biggest key components to understanding financial aid, especially from the graduate level, is the cost of attendance. Now, the cost of attendance compiles two different key components. So it's billed expenses and non-billed expenses. Billed expenses are things that are going to show up on, the tuition bill that we send you, right? So that's going to be tuition, any kind of mandatory fees. If you're a full-time student, it's going to include medical insurance. This is waivable, but medical insurance is a requirement in the state of Massachusetts for anybody that's going to be a full-time student. That's graduate students included. And then graduate housing was going to be a billed expense as well if you do choose to rent for Boston University. So Boston University does have an inventory of graduate housing. It is very competitive and it tends to be a little more expensive. If you have questions about that, we can talk about it at the end. And then the other part of the cost of attendance is non-billed expenses. So these are things that are built into your overall ability to borrow, but they're not necessarily going to show up on your bill, right? So room and board, especially if you're living off campus, obviously that bill is not coming from BU. That's going to come from whomever your landlord is. We work in personal expenses, transportation, books and supplies, and then federal loan fees as well. So all of these things aren't going to be billed, but they are in basically what we call your cost of attendance or your budget. So these are just key things to understand as we move forward. And we can talk a little bit more about what those actual numbers are. So keep in mind that this is the COA for the 23-24 academic year. Full-time tuition and mandatory fees for this academic year, not the next one necessarily. You'll see these figures and you'll see that the part-time tuition and fees is much, much cheaper. So part-time tuition and fees is always calculated by credit, whereas the full-time tuition and fees is a flat rate. So when I say per credit, that means the average class that you're going to take at BU Wheelock for the part-time rate would probably be about 4 credits. So $997 per credit for 4 credits is $39.88. Sorry about that. Which is about half the cost per credit as it would have been for the flat rate for a full-time expense. There are benefits to taking full-time classes here at BU Wheelock. You have access to FitRec, our amazing gym. You have access to all of the resources in the library. There's a lot of other components on campus that you may or may not want to access that you do have access to if you do choose to study full-time, but we understand that there is a cost-saving element to your journey here at BU Wheelock if you choose to join us, and the part-time evening rate is such a great and affordable way for you to actually join our community and still be a working professional during the daytime as well to help kind of offset some of those costs. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to indicate that this was just the 23-24 academic year is that in the prior year, I did see a 4% increase on tuition from 22-23 to 23-24. I don't know if it's going to be quite as high of a tuition increase, and unfortunately, I don't have those numbers yet. I do hope to have those numbers probably by mid-March, closer to when we're going to have the in-person accepted students day here at Boston University's campus. So all the more reason if you are accepted to attend that in-person accepted students day. And if you do get accepted, you will get more information about attending that accepted students day in your award letter, okay? And then the other part of, this cost of attendance, not the full-time tuition, the part-time tuition, were these estimated expenses that I put down at the bottom here. Now, these are all set by our executive director of financial aid up the street for basically the entire college. And a lot of it is based on the consumer pricing index. So we assume that food and housing per semester or personal expenses per semester, transportation, books, and supplies for students in BU Wheelock as full-time students or students that are taking a half-time course load that's 6 credits or more are going to be about this. Now we understand that as a full-time student, you have to exist as a person. You're going to need food, you're going to need somewhere to live. And that's why we include these in your budget. So you have the ability to borrow loans or finance your education up to the costs that we've estimated here. Now, if your costs tend to be a little bit higher than this, that's fine. We can work with that. We have budget appeal processes, but that's a question that we can explore once you come to campus. All right, first part about financial aid that you're all dying to hear about is merit scholarships. Now, we put a couple figures here on the side. Last year, I did award for $5.1 million in merit scholarship. That was to our new continuing and partner students. So that's pretty much everyone that we have here on campus. And that actually went out to about 60% of all applicants last year. So your chances of getting a merit scholarship are decently high. Albeit I cannot guarantee that you're going to get a merit scholarship. It is unfortunately not entirely up to me. All of the merit scholarships that come from BU Wheelock come from the holistic review of your application based on your faculty reviewers, okay? So, when you're thinking about the finishing touches on your application or things that are going to make you stronger candidate for scholarship or for BU Wheelock as a whole, just keep that in the back of your mind because it does have such an implication on your, feasibility for financing your education. A couple basics here on the side. Scholarships are generally awarded at time of admission. You will see a scholarship award notification in your admissions letter if you were awarded a scholarship. There are no supplemental applications for the scholarships. We get that question a lot. There is no, supplemental applications for any kind of specific scholarships either here at BU Wheelock. Everything is decided by the faculty, and then we've streamlined the approach so we can give you a scholarship decision when you get admitted. Recipients are chosen based on the strength of their applications during faculty review, like I just mentioned. All scholarships are merit-based, and that's to say that we unfortunately do not have the resource for need-based scholarships. So, any kind of appeal process doesn't necessarily exist at this time, unfortunately, and all of our resources kind of go toward the admissions and recruitment side of everything. Not that I don't have a desire in my heart to help you all finance and give out as much money as possible, but unfortunately, we only have limited resources to scholarship our students, and we want to make sure that those resources go to the strongest applicants. Scholarship amounts do have a wide range. So everything can go from a 33% scholarship for someone taking a part-time course all the way up to last year, we instituted a 75% scholarship for our strongest applicants. So like I said, there's a very wide range. On average, though, our most common scholarship tends to be about 50% of the full-time tuition. And then finally, scholarship recipients who are accepted into a multi-year program are eligible to receive that same scholarship and the same dollar value for all subsequent years of their program. These scholarships only can apply to fall and spring. So if you're someone that is in a 2-year program, like a counseling program, if any of you are applying to that, you can expect a scholarship that you get for fall and spring of your first year to be the same amount as the fall and spring of your second subsequent year. Other types of aid. We do have partnership discounts. So here at BU Wheelock, we do have a lot of partner institutions that we work with. Just to give a quick example, a lot of them actually have to do with a lot of the school communities in our area. So Brookline Public Schools, Boston Public Schools, Everett Public Schools, just to name a few. We have a partnership with them where full-time working professionals within those schools, that can be paraprofessionals or teachers, et cetera, are all eligible to take part-time courses here at BU Wheelock with the expectation that they will at least receive a 33% discount on their billed tuition. If you want more information about the partner programs or whether or not you may be eligible for a partnership discount, just please visit our website. I forgot to put that link in there. I can get it later, or if Gabe, you can grab that link for me and put that in the chat, that would be fantastic. The other type of aid is federal financial aid or private loans. So federal financial aid, unfortunately, federal government also does not have need-based aid for graduate students. So all federal aid is going to come in the form of federal loans. This can come in the form of either the unsubsidized direct loan or the federal graduate plus loan. So a lot of you who have borrowed in the past as undergraduates could remember that there is a federal subsidized and unsubsidized direct loan. Unfortunately for graduate students, there's only the federal direct unsubsidized loan, and we will talk a little bit more about that. And then private loans, all private loans are based on a credit check, and you would be the principal borrower as a graduate student, and we'll talk about those as well in a later slide. So a little more in depth, and I'm sorry, this is kind of content heavy here on this slide, about federal loans. The annual borrowing limit for the federal unsubsidized direct loan is $20,500. So that's to say that every student has the ability to borrow $20,500 over the course of one single academic year. Most generally, students will borrow the entire amount in the fall and spring, and that will be split evenly. That's an institutional policy. We have to split them evenly, as you can see here. If you did borrow undergraduate loans, your lifetime aggregate limits when you were borrowing undergraduate loans were $31,000 if you were a dependent student and $57,500 if you were an independent student. So one of the things that can limit your ability to borrow loans as a graduate student is if you have exceeded any of these limits as an undergraduate student, which generally aid offices, if they're doing their work correctly, will not allow you to do. So you should not necessarily have to worry about it. But if you are worried about it and you want a little more information or more peace of mind about your borrowing history, you can and should review all your federal loan records or Pell records, if you have that as well, on nslds.ed.gov. This is just a quick little thing where, I find that a lot of aid offices for undergraduate students don't let students know that this is an option for them. You can look at your entire borrowing history right here on this site for all federal loans. And then finally, the lifetime aggregate borrowing limit for federal unsubsidized or subsidized direct loans is $138,500 for all graduate students. So if you are someone that is taking a second master's degree program, this is something that you may want to check on nslds.ed.gov to make sure that you're eligible to borrow more loan funding. If you are close to or at this lifetime aggregate limit, you will not be able to borrow further loans. Now, the other hand, there also is the federal plus loan, which you can stack on top of the federal and subsidized loan. Generally, the federal plus loan is something where students who want to borrow so they can pay rent to an off-campus housing or have personal expenses that are factored into their budget can borrow that loan, have it sent to the school, and have it requested to them as a refund. So the federal plus loan program, which a lot of you may have been a member of as an undergraduate student where your parent was the borrower, that would be the parent plus loan. You are now the principal borrower of it as a graduate student and an independent student. So the plus loans can be borrowed up to the total cost of attendance, like we talked about before. You would borrow these loans for the full academic year, and they'd be dispersed in equal installments at the beginning of each semester. So we have to split these federal loans evenly, unless otherwise indicated by the borrower. If you are a plus or private borrower and it exceeds your billed expenses, you may see a credit on your student account. Like I just said, a lot of students do take these plus loans or private loans, these credit-based loans, to get a credit on their account and then distribute that funding elsewhere so they can pay for their living expenses, et cetera. Some key things to be on the lookout for if you're thinking that you may or may not be eligible for federal aid. The first and foremost is that you must be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or eligible non-citizen. You must be enrolled in at least half-time in a degree-seeking program, so that's 6+ credits in any given semester. And all credits have to actually be part of that degree program. So, it's not necessarily true that a elective that is not going toward your finality of a degree or not going toward degree progress is going to count toward your federal eligibility to borrow loans. You have to be in good standing with all previous federal loans or grants, so that's no deferrals, defaults, et cetera. You also have to not be, meeting that lifetime aggregate borrowing limit. You have to be meeting satisfactory academic progress. So for federal purposes, the cumulative 2.0 GPA is satisfactory academic progress. However, I would say that within BU Wheelock, in order to be academically eligible for each semester without having probation, you must be above a 3.0. And that's actually the policy for our scholarships as well. So I don't anticipate that being a problem for any of you. I'm sure you're all fantastic students. But yeah, just for federal purposes, you must be meeting satisfactory academic progress, and we can talk about more about what that means. And then finally, for plus loans, you must meet the credit criteria or have obtained a cosigner or endorser. That's very important as it is a credit-based loan, just like any private loan, and we'll talk more about that. So applying for federal aid. So to receive federal aid, there are a couple things you absolutely must do. And the first and foremost is complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. If you were an undergraduate at some point, you probably did it for all 4 years. If you were a previous borrower for graduate school, if you're going for another master's or PhD and you want to borrow, again, this is something that shouldn't be new to you. You have to complete all the direct loan request forms. You have to complete the direct loan request form or graduate plus request form. So we do not actually put out aid packages, as you might have been familiar with in your undergraduate days. So when you get a scholarship, it's not going to automatically come in like an aid package, or you're not going to get packaged with, any kind of federal need-based or loan-based funding on your account, like you might have been familiar with in your undergraduate days. We actually go for an active borrowing approach, which is why we need you to fill out the form, understanding that a lot of our students are part-time and you may not want the full $20,500 for any kind of given academic year. So just important to note that you will not receive any loan funding unless you fill out those forms. This is something that comes into a point of contention with our students for some reason, but I'm hoping that you all in this upcoming fall of 24 will be fantastic and not have to make me worry about that. And then finally, you have to complete the entrance counseling and master promissory note requirements. So there are actually 2 separate MPNs if you borrow both the unsubsidized loan and the plus loan, but these are also pretty standard. You must do them before you start any kind of graduate loan program. And this is going to actually ensure that the loan's dispersed to Boston University. And then finally, just a couple other tips. When you complete the FAFSA, you have the option to put a whole list of schools. Boston University has to be in the top 10 schools of your FSA profile for us to receive the FAFSA transaction. The school code is listed here, so if you're looking for the school code, you can't find it. It's pretty Googleable, but in case you just need it for your reference, there it is. And then I would strongly consider using the IRS data retrieval tool when you're completing the FAFSA, just so you can ensure that there's accurate information coming to me. That will pull all of the data that you have submitted to the IRS in your tax return from the prior year, and that will basically make the FAFSA a pretty painless process. You can get it done in probably 10 minutes if you do it with the IRS data retrieval tool. And it ensures that you don't have to hear from me about any kind of questions or concerns I have about the information that you've submitted to me. So 2 words, everyone's happy there. All right, private credit-based loans. I put a couple links in the chat about resources that Boston University does give to our students, both for international and domestic students, and loan programs that would be available to you. But for our domestic students, I would highly recommend you utilize Credible if you're looking at any kind of private credit-based loan. You can create an account, you can compare and contrast lending options. They pretty much set it up all for you, and they make it very intuitive to navigate the research process. Unfortunately, as a aid official and working for the school, I am not legally able to recommend any loan program or lender to you. You will have to unfortunately do the research for yourself, but if you have questions about any of the information they're telling you, that's something that you can definitely reach out to me, and I can help give you a little more clarity about it. You're not required to borrow from any of the lenders that you may see on Credible. Credible is a resource for you to start your research. I will say it's a very extensive but not exhaustive list of options that are available to you. I have seen students and I've met with students who have had a lot of success with local credit unions, or maybe their parents are part of a bank in their hometown that can offer some kind of education loan for the student. And then you also have to apply for private loans directly through the lender. So you can apply for private loans through Boston University. Unfortunately, we are not a lender. You will have to go through the lenders as they come to you. They send a certification to the school. We check to verify that you are in good academic standing and also enrolled. And then we will have that disbursement set up so you don't have to worry about it. So basically, as long as you cross your I's and dot your T's when you're applying for the loan, they will send us a certification and we'll make sure it gets done. Just a couple borrowing tips. I always recommend that you try to only choose one credit-based loan. You do not want that extra hit on your credit, just general life advice. I will say that the plus loan as a credit-based loan and private loans as credit-based loan, you will have to choose between which option is best for you. I like to tell students that the plus loan tends to be a little bit more lenient on a credit check. So if you're someone that's a little less comfortable in your credit, you're just coming right out of undergrad, you haven't built up an extensive credit history, maybe the plus loan is for you. However, that said, the interest rate for the plus loan tends to be above 7%. I do not know what it's going to be for your class in the upcoming fall. I will get more clarity in October what the actual new in October of next year what the new plus interest rates are going to be. But 7% does tend to be a little high. So if you're someone that's very comfortable with your credit, or you've been around a while, you've built an extensive credit history, you leased a car or whatever, and you made all your payments on time, maybe a private loan is for you. And you can find a much more competitive interest rate, which will save you thousands of dollars potentially in the long run. So just make sure you're doing your research and taking all these things into account. And then also just make sure you're only borrowing what you need. You're accruing interest at this time. So if you're borrowing more than you need and you're just letting it sit on your account, this interest will come back and build over time, and it will end up costing you more money in the long run if you're not being more proactive about it. And then there are some loan calculator resources. I did not put those links in the chat, but if you ask me for them via email, I can send you a couple loan calculator resources if you have that concern, as we get closer to the start of the fall semester. I see one quick question in the chat. That very good point. When exactly do I expect to apply for the loan? Please do not apply for credit-based loans until we get closer to the summer or over the summer. The reason I say that is credit-based loans do have a credit check component that does expire. And if you're someone that wants to borrow one semester at a time, so say you get your credit check in July, you want to borrow for fall, and then you want to borrow for spring. If you borrow in July, or you get the credit check in July, the credit check's not going to expire, and you can go forward and you can use that same credit check to actually apply a loan for spring. But if you apply for the loan way too early, the credit check could expire, and you could have run into an issue with having to get another hit on your credit before you can actually borrow another loan. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Great. Finally, payment plans. This is my last point that I want to hit before we can open up some questions for all of you. There are two payment plan options available to you if you're a full-time student. It's a full-time payment plan that starts in May. It's 5 months. You can set the terms of the payment plan and how much money you want to put aside for the payment plan. So if you're someone that's going to be borrowing a loan, you can factor that into the total amount you want to put to this payment plan. It does go through a third party. It goes through Nelnet. Some of you may be familiar with Nelnet, as they could be your loan servicer. They are technically my federal loan servicer for my undergraduate loans that I'm still paying. But like I said, it's all third party, and more information is in a link in the chat that I sent earlier. Part-time students have a different option for payment plans. They have a down payment of 25% and then 3 equal payments for the final 75% of the semesterly installments. But like I said, more information and setting up the payment plan goes through our student accounting services office, and I put the link in the chat. So hopefully all of you can get in contact with them if that's an interesting or something of interest to you.